All right, and welcome to the first podcast of two for the cast assessment of season one of Hysteria, Cult of the Maenads. Today, my co-host is Tiki. Tiki, how you doing today?
You know what? I swear to God, I'm not even kidding, Casey. I'm kind of tired and I could use a coffee. I'm not even trying to do like the two triple shots
That's
brandy right
exactly what I thought
now.
you were setting up.
I'm legitimately like, oh God, I do not have the triple shots on me. I'm sorry, so I'll do my best tonight.
It's all good. I definitely trust your judgment. I think you have a really good analytical mind. So I'm curious to hear your thoughts on each of the cast members. So, for those who don't know, who are piecing it together, Hysteria is a game of both social deduction, but also analyzing the clues that are left at our murder scene to deduce who these killers are. It'll work similarly to a game of werewolf, or currently what is very popular on TV being the traders. So there's usually two eliminations around, or there could be up to two eliminations around. We do things slightly different. So our cast is comprised of alumni, people that have been involved within the Prometheus brand, whether they played the game, they've been on production, they have been on the podcast. So this is based off of Tiki's side of things is going to be based off of what he knows from
Hmm.
viewing prior seasons or based on some minor video content that I've given him on each of the players. So we're going to start off with our first of our cast members. We have Andrew Denson, alumni from season one, and the fourth placer for that season. And so let's get your take. How do you think Andrew would do in a game of social deduction and murder and betrayal?
Okay, so really quick, I'm going to introduce the concept of the EDGIC ratings because
Absolutely.
I'm a freaking freak and I've got to always have like some sort of extra thing that I bring to the table here. So for Prometheus season two, about midway through that game, I assigned an EDGIC rating for each of the remaining players based on how well I thought they do. EDGIC is simply editing plus logic. It's been a long time thing in the Survivor community, but people use it for other reality shows as well. Survivor is just kind of like the main thing that it's used for. Essentially, it's you've got a rating and you've got a tone. So the rating could be UTR, which is under the radar, speaks for itself. Middle of the road, which is basically like your typical narrator role. CP, which is complex personality, your strategist, game bots, etc. And then OTT, over the top, your big characters. All of those people could either be toneless, positive, negative, or mixed. If y'all want more context for what EDGIC is, Casey, I trust you can maybe link the EDGIC conversation that you and I had in the video description for
Yeah,
more context on
yeah,
that.
that's a good idea. I will
So,
definitely do that.
okay, so without further ado, I actually, Casey, I wouldn't have even done this if the math just didn't can work out for it, because of the cast, I was able to slot them into a different EDGIC rating for every character. And with Andrew, I am giving Coach Denson a good old OTTP. I think Coach is going to be our over the top positive character this time around. Uh, Look, and I'm just going to tell you up front, I'm not going to have that much to say in regards to like their game ability for the format, just because I'm not really like I haven't watched the Traders. I've watched a couple of seasons, The Mole. That's about it. So I'm mostly going off of this from a character perspective myself. I hope you can appreciate that.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah, Andrew, really quick. Obviously, he had the I'd say Andrew was probably like the definitive fallen angel of Survivor, probably even more so than or of Prometheus. I'm sorry, probably even more so than Tracy was in season 2. I love Tracy, but she herself said she almost actively wanted to get out at final 3 because she was so anxious to face the jury. Whereas Andrew's whole storyline all season was, if I could just get past that final immunity challenge, and he could not. So I think with Andrew, there's a lot of sympathy. He's a big fan favorite. I personally really like the guy. I've recorded a couple podcasts with him when he did the season ranking. I came on for a couple of them. He's one of those he's one of those people in Prometheus season 1. I infamously, I love my team, I guess, kind of. Vote me out instead of David, who's literally getting a haircut. But infamously, I kind of feel like literally everyone on the other team I would have worked better with than the team I ended up on. And Andrew, I feel like, is the big one because me and him actually had a pretty decent amount of time in the beginning where we were kind of getting to know each other. So I'm very much rooting for Andrew. And I really think no matter how he places, he's going to be a positive presence. We'll see.
So with that, do you ultimately think Andrew is capable of murdering off his fellow players? Or do you think he's most likely going to be an innocent?
I think if Andrew was put into a position to be a killer, just knowing what I know about him, knowing how much of a team player he is, how he kind of slides into that coach role, I think it'd be tough for him. I'm not going to lie. I think if he was put into the position of a killer, it would be a difficult tightrope act. So, yeah, it'd be an interesting position for him to be in for sure.
Okay. So let's move on to our second player. Our second player is someone who no one has yet seen play. It is Andy Christian. He is 51, I want to say. He's relatively new to the org scene. But what did you think of Andy's video that you saw? You got to see a little bit of preseason content on Andy. What do you think about Andy?
You know what? It's kind of interesting because you do say he's new, and I believe you, but I have seen his name pop up in the community. I've seen his name pop up as far as like the people you may know on Facebook. So he wasn't like an unfamiliar face when I saw him pop up. Let's see. I'm just now realizing I don't have the document with the ratings up. I gave him, I think, a CPM, complex personality mixed, because my thing with Andy and his tone and his gameplay is I definitely think he's going to try and be manipulative. He's talked openly about that. I think the problem that he might run into is a problem that, and keep in mind, this is me just very much projecting. I really don't know. This is very much a first impressions thing. But I could foresee Andy having a similar issue to the older women who play Survivor in the mother role, where I could totally see him kind of falling into like the father figure role or like the quirky uncle role, and then having a hard time getting out of that, mostly just based on, the relative age of the other cast members, although you do have a few cast members that are kind of in his ballpark age-wise. But regardless, I kind of see him. Yeah, I just checked CPM for him. I see him as someone who's going to definitely try and play the game, but might get challenged based on his own archetype, if that makes sense.
Fair enough. So do you think he has the capacity to be a killer?
I actually think a killer would be a role that he would thrive in, to tell you the truth, based on the little I've seen of him. Because, like I said, I really think that he wants to be perceived as that kind of like father figure, kooky uncle sort of role. But he wants to play that kind of gangster game. So I think a killer role would actually be perfect for him in that regard.
Okay. Moving on, we have Anna Rigetti. She played in season one. She was out a couple into the merge. She was the third out in the merge, officially the seventh placer. Um, three, seventh place. Um, and that was her first org. She played one other org, got out first, and then so I think now this is technically her third,
Oh wow. Okay.
but is different given that she played Prometheus. She was out her number one in a Survivor org, and then now she's in this about a year and a half, almost 2 years later. So, what are your
Uh,
thoughts on Anna?
Yeah, so the big thing from her from season one, I think, is that me and I'm sure other people had her pegged as the potential winner of that season just based on the edit. And I honestly think you did a really good job with her as a potential decoy winner. Um, with that in mind, my EDGIC rating for her is going to be CPP, complex personality positive. And that's because I'm going to have the gut feeling that Anna is going to approach this game um, with something to prove. Like you said, she is a very fresh face in the community, but I feel like she is a very adaptable personality as far as getting people on her side. She's just a very likable presence. I think she really knows how to kind of like navigate those individual relationships, talk to people one on one, talk to people in a group setting. Um, as far as the killer thing goes, I honestly think I could see her being really sharp when it comes to calling out the killer. I don't really know her well enough to know how she would fare as a killer, but for some reason, I could see her being someone to really kind of put the pieces together with the clues. I think she's got a very like logic driven mind for something like that. So, and yeah, I definitely think that part of her storyline, hence the CPP, is going to be kind of like coming back after sort of almost tasting victory, getting it swept out from under her right before the finals. I think we're going to be seeing a something to prove kind of arc from her.
Interesting, interesting. So moving on to our next castaway, we have Bloody. Bloody was
Oh
from
boy.
season two, essentially the super fan archetype. Very big character. Bloody ended up being on production for season three. And I actually think Bloody and Anna share the same placement. They're both seventh placers. So what are your thoughts on Bloody?
Oh man, Casey, I'm going to throw it to you. What do you think my EDGIC rating for her is from this cast?
Oh man. I'm gonna say like a CPM.
Okay. This might be a hot take, and like I think Bloody's awesome. I think she's an awesome member of the community, great character on Prometheus. I'm slotting Bloody into the OTTN role here. I think we're looking at the game's full-fledged fucking villain. And I'll tell you why.
Okay, I'm excited. Let's hear it.
I think that Bloody throughout Prometheus season 2 was very much in that M rating, right? She was very much kind of like all over the place. All eyes were on her. She was a rootable character, but still very chaotic at the same time. I think the final tribal council was like a transformative character moment in her arc that fully turned her into a villain. Now, that being said, she's an awesome villain. She's like, I really fully respected how she was calling people out and shit. You know what I mean? But I really do think that just, like just how brash and in your face she was at that final tribal council. I mean, she is a player, and she is someone where, like, she will not let anything get in her way. She's totally fearless when it comes to that. I think that especially in a format like this, honestly, killer, someone who's trying to find the killer, I think either role would fit her pretty well. Yeah, I mean, Bloody's the type of character where it's like if you have her on, if she's the first boo, if she's the merge boo, if she's in the final three, whatever, she's going to be like a central fixture of orbit in the cast. She's that big of a personality, and I definitely think after that showing that she had in the final tribal council, that an OTTN showing from her is definitely a possibility. I just want to emphasize, I think OTTN people in Survivor tend to be some of the more popular. Like, it's not saying that she's just like a total villain and an irredeemable person. I'm really obviously not saying that. I hope you get that distinction.
Yeah. To be honest, I should have actually realized that's what you would have rated her. But no, yeah, I over the top, especially. No, that's Bloody. So yeah, very interesting takes. Love it. And I hope Bloody loves that little bit about her. Moving on to our next castaway, we have David Cantera, who played in season 1 of Prometheus. Had the big haircut storyline. David was the merge boot and 9th placer for the original season of Prometheus.
So I honestly, I love David on a personal level. He was very nice to me when I was going through my mental health stuff after I got eliminated. I have absolutely nothing but good words to say about him. In game, though, honestly, Casey, the longer that time goes by, the more I'm sitting here and being like, what the fuck? Like, I didn't even go after him. That's the fucked up thing, is that this dude was so good initially at like forming first impressions on his tribe that I was so intimidated by him that I did not dare throw his name out, even though he was literally in the name of getting a haircut. He was literally in the middle of getting a haircut. Like, that's how damn good and like instantly charismatic this guy was on our initial tribe. I didn't even think to go for him. Honestly, I kind of have a little bit of a, like, because I was trying to target Caitlyn because she showed up late. What if I targeted David instead? I don't know. Maybe it would have turned out differently. I think the big thing that killed me was the tech issues, more than anything else. But I digress. David, this might sound like a boring answer as far as like how big of a character he can potentially be, but being as though this is like a more engaged thing, we're gonna have to be on for more time, and I kind of get the sense that the haircut thing probably haunts him a little bit. Like, it wasn't a great look for him. I get the sense that David's just going to be a straight MOR presence, middle of the road. He's going to be a nice narrator. He's going to have a few confessionals. I don't really think he's going to be as in the thick of it as he was on that initial Prometheus tribe. But that's just me kind of thinking that, like, if I were in David's shoes, I would want to basically play as boring of a game as possible after the haircut shit. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I totally get it. So your thoughts on the possibility of David being a killer or an innocent?
I think that, honestly, I love you, David, but I don't think he's going to do great either way. I think if he was a killer, he would have some tells. Just knowing what I know about him, I could totally see him having some tells that people could pick up on. Because of that, I think he'd have a better chance as someone who's investigating the killers. But like I said, I don't know. Something tells me that he's going to get in his own way as far as like, overthinking if he's being too big of a presence or too out in front, and that might get in his own way. So I don't know. I feel like I'm being too negative on him. I'm glad to see him play again because the haircut thing certainly was a big story.
Yeah,
and with him as the merge boot.
Yeah, I mean, David's an icon. David's an icon.
Mhm.
He's fun. He's funny. He's a great presence to have around. But I could definitely see how you might say some of those things. But I'm just happy that he got a chance to play again and maybe redeem himself in some sort of capacity since he had gotten a haircut. So, but it's a great storyline, and I'm
It's like he
happy he
just
had
comes
it.
out with like fucking Fabio hair, just like a huge mane of hair. Like, guess what, guys? I'm not cutting it this time.
But yeah, he's a great presence, and he's definitely very iconic from the first season. So we're going to move on to our final contestant for the first podcast. We have David Weinstein, who is someone who no one has yet seen play. New to the community, this is David's second game.
Really? Huh.
First actually being Prometheus season 3. Um,
Oh,
so
wow.
yeah,
Okay.
David actually applied for Prometheus twice, for season 2. And when he applied, if I remember correctly, because it was more than like 2 years ago at this point,
Mhm.
David had David gave a pretty good interview, definitely had a more logical mind, almost game bot-ish, had
Mhm.
like this big whiteboard behind him with like notes and stuff like that. I believe he previously had done stuff with like computer coding and stuff like that. And then he applied for season 3 of Prometheus, and the interview was transformative. It was much
Mm.
different from his prior. And he had talked about his experiences over the past year, about how not to sort of, if I remember correctly, not to sort of look at life so logically. You have
Mhm.
to have a mix of emotion and logic. But very curious to hear your thoughts on David.
Okay. So honestly, I think my EDGIC rating is going to reflect the former and not the latter. Because I'm going to be honest with you, he did come off pretty game body to me, but not in like an unendearing way. I honestly thought he was pretty thoughtful for what he was saying about the game. And because of that, I'm actually pretty surprised how new he is. Like I've played in more games than him, and I consider myself like way more of a production person than an actual player at this point. Like I will very rarely step out of my comfort zone and actually play. With that in mind, I gave him CPN, but he was one of those ratings that it was a little bit tricky for me. I just gave him that rating just on the basis that he was very clearly strategically minded, and it really seems like he's not afraid to cut allies if he needs to. As far as the killer thing, I think he can be a versatile player, especially I feel like the killer thing, this is going to be one of the few times where being a new person in the community is actually going to work to your benefit because people don't know you. So, like, I feel like that gives you, it could work to his disadvantage, right? Because it could cast a little bit more suspicion on him because they don't know him. But I could also see it working the other way, where I could also see a bunch of other people getting targeted specifically because of their past experiences and past reputations, and him kind of slipping by because of
Yeah.
that.
But
So,
keep in
yeah.
mind that everybody in this game is not totally unknown. You have a grouping of season 3 players, a grouping of season 2, a grouping of season 1.
Right.
There's only one person, we'll get to it on the second podcast, who has almost no sort of prior presence established. But in terms of David, David is of great strategic mind and a very interesting player that I think people could really like.
Yeah, and as far as the other season 3 people, obviously I haven't seen season 3 yet, so I don't really have a lot of context for how they interacted with each other. But yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, that concludes the first podcast of our cast assessments for Hysteria, Cult of the Maenads. So thank you all for tuning in. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. And thank you so much, Tiki, for coming on. And we'll see you on the next podcast. Bye.